be conscious of everybody's time, we will go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nate Holt, and I'm the Graduate Enrollment Advisor for the GEM program. We're extremely happy to have you here today, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Currently, the GEM program has nearly 400 students and alumni all around the world. The caliber and diversity and reach of this program is one of the GEM program's greatest differentiators. But it's the breadth of our alumni and student network that isn't the only thing that sets us apart. It's the fact that we strongly encourage anyone that's considering the GEM program to speak with our students and alumni and hear about their experiences firsthand. So I know many of you in attendance today are considering applying to the GEM program for our next start date in January. So we understand what vital part this webcast plays in your decision-making process. For those of you that are newer to the GEM program, we have cohorts every January and July, and our next cohort begins January 14th. And there's still time to apply. So after today's webcast, I'll follow up with everybody and send you detailed information about the application process and answer any additional questions that you have. So therefore, that's the purpose of today's webcast, to give you the opportunity to ask your questions, and also hear some additional questions that you may not have thought of and hear it from the student and alumni's firsthand perspective. So we wanted to thank you guys. Many of you sent in your questions ahead of time, and we wanted to get right into asking our panel some of your questions. So before answering each question, we will have each panelist introduce themselves and say a few words. So we'll have our panelists come through now, please. And we will go ahead and get started. Perfect. So our first question is going to be for a recent graduate of the GEM program, Jason Stewart. Jason, how has the GEM program advanced your career in the energy industry?
Well, thanks, Nathan. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak with everyone today. As mentioned, my name is Jason Stewart. I'm an account manager with Baker Hughes, and I'm in the completion tools team. I'm also a very proud member of Cohort 10 through the GEM program, and I graduated in January of 2015. So specifically to answer your question, Nathan, with regard to my career since the program, for those that are familiar with the state of the industry, the oil and gas industry over the past 24 months, it's definitely been in kind of a dire position. I graduated right kind of at the beginning of that, and service companies such as Baker Hughes have been some of the hardest hit. So I'll tell you that my career advancement hasn't necessarily been linear, and that I didn't graduate from the program and then immediately get a promotion. However, I have been very strategic in the way that I've crafted my career growth since graduating from the program. Currently, I'm in a role, an expanded role in a different product line than I was whenever I was going through the GEM program. And it's given me an opportunity to really take on a lot of new responsibilities and to position myself for growth once this downturn kind of stops and we start to see growth within the industry again. So I hope that answers your question. And obviously, if there's any other questions regarding my career, I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more.
Perfect. Thanks, Jason. We had an additional question come in that was similar but more tailored to a current student. So Natalie, I will ask you, has your career advanced at all since you've been enrolled? And if so, do you feel the GEM program helped you with that promotion?
Great, thanks, Nate. Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Mills. I'm a current student in the GEM program, but not for long because I actually graduate at the end of December, which I'm really excited about. So I am of Cohort 14. And I currently am an asset and environmental planning engineer for Southern Company. For those not familiar, Southern Company is the utility in the Southeast region, one of them at least. And so I live in Birmingham, Alabama, so far from Denver. But to answer the question, so I was very fortunate. I had been kind of on the precipice of a promotion when I started the GEM program. And so I applied, I got in, and then I went for my first 4 days. And then a couple weeks after I had returned from my first 4 days, I was informed that my current supervisor told me, hey, we really like that you are taking the initiative to invest in your career and taking your education to that next level. And so they ended up offering me the promotion within a couple of weeks. So not saying that if you join the GEM program, you're automatically going to get a promotion, because I surely wasn't expecting that. But it was definitely a way to tell my current supervisor, like, I'm taking my career seriously, and this program is going to help me get there. Well, about 4 months into the program, I actually, I'd been attending meetings with several executives in them for the past year, and they had an opening in another organization within our company open up. And when they were considering, do we post this as a job, or do we do a developmental opportunity and move someone from a different part of the company into this role, they said, well, we'd rather do the developmental. And I think, and someone who had been in those meetings recommended that I get the job. And so I think that the GEM program was directly related to that opportunity and that additional promotion. And that was because before I started the program, I would attend those meetings, and I was a little intimidated by the executives in the room. And I also was more of a wallflower, kind of taking the information in. And then after being in the GEM program for a few months, I felt the confidence to be able to talk knowledgeably about the industry as a whole. Going into it, I had only had electric sector experience. And out through just a few months in the GEM program, I was able to get working knowledge of the oil and gas sector as well, and how that affects the electric sector and how it's all tied together in the energy industry. And so I think because of that, I was speaking up in meetings more, and that's how I was able to get the opportunity to move into a new role to expand my knowledge even more. So I hope that answers the question.
That's great. Thanks, Natalie. The next question that we have, I will ask Owen, as someone that's been graduated for a few years now. Owen, how has the GEM program impacted your career, and has it helped you reach your goals?
Sure. Thanks, Nathan. And hi, everyone out there. My name is Owen Macmillan. Currently work for Shell in Houston. I'm originally from Denver, though. So when I was thinking about graduate programs and graduate level degree, I was working in the field as a petroleum landman in North Dakota. And so I entered the program in that capacity. And then while I was in the program, I took a job with a small operator in Denver. And then upon graduating, I'd say about several months to a year afterwards, I was ultimately found a job with Shell, was recruited to Shell. And so prior to joining GEM, one of my goals was to, work for a larger company, multinational type of company. And so getting the graduate degree, getting really exposure to the business side of the oil and gas profession and business was something that GEM opened the door to. Without having that graduate level degree, I wouldn't have even been eligible for this particular job, which was working onshore again as a landman at Shell. And since then, have progressively taken on responsibilities and roles of increased importance. Now I'm working the deepwater Gulf of Mexico, which is something I didn't previously envision what I was doing prior to the GEM program. So I would certainly say it's opened some doors for me. That's not without, being proactive on my end and, knowing what I want to get from my career. But certainly was able to open some doors and just gave me, the program really gave me a holistic sort of view of the energy industry, which is something like a company like Shell was appealed to them. And so, many doors opened that way. And then just, the professors in my cohort that I made come from all sorts of various backgrounds. So I'm able to call upon various subject matter experts and all different avenues of the energy value chain, whether it's the upstream part of the business that produces and explores for hydrocarbons, or the downstream end, which does the marketing and transportation thereof. So, people from my cohort come from these diverse backgrounds, and from, you know, small companies, big companies, entrepreneurial types. So been able to call on them at various points depending on where I am have been in my career and where I want to go to get feedback and you know, that sort of thing. So prior to the program, I think one of my goals was you know, an opportunity to work something beyond the onshore, which is what I had been doing previously. And so after the program, having this kind of background, GEM was one of the things that got me to where I wanted to be.
That's great, Owen. Thank you. And I wanted to remind all of our viewers, there is the Q&A option. So you have questions, additional questions that you think while you're watching this, please feel free to submit those and we'll get through them and have those answered for you as well. So our next question I will ask to a current student of ours, Natasha. Do the projects you complete in class relate back to your current position? Have you applied what you are learning in class to your current position?
Hi, everybody. My name is Natasha. My background is in engineering, both environmental and mechanical. I currently work at Navigant Consulting up in Boulder, Colorado. I've been with Navigant for just under 3 years now. And I work as an energy efficiency engineer, which means I work on a variety of projects related to energy efficiency and demand response evaluations and planning for utilities. So that could involve technical analysis, presentations, field work, those sorts of things. So to the question about projects relating back to my current position, I do find that that the information I learn in class very applicable to my current job. So I know Owen and Natalie both mentioned kind of having a holistic view of the energy industry, and as a consultant, that's a really important aspect of what I do. It makes me more valuable to my employer, and really just gives me an understanding of how the work that I do, and really each GEM student, whatever you bring, you can figure out how that connects kind of to the larger industry. And so I find that really valuable. I also have found that in different classes, the professors give groups the option to choose their topic. So if there's something of interest to you that you want to explore at your company or at someone in your group's company, you can really use the projects to provide good value to a current employer. And so I've seen that provide really good experiences both for students and companies. And also, I will say, one of my assignments was to analyze and discuss my current company's sustainable energy kind of vision. And that was pretty interesting. GEM gave me a good excuse to interview senior executives at my company, which really, allowed for networking, allowed for just making those connections for senior executives to know what the GEM program is and the value that it's providing. So whether it's your current position, kind of networking within your company, or really providing value to a project at another student's company, I think GEM you can really curtail GEM to provide good value.
Thank you, Natasha. That's great. Natalie, I have a question for you as an out-of-state student. I don't live in Denver. How hard is it to attend the cohort weekends?
Oh, that's a great question, because that was definitely one that I was a little worried about when I was considering the program. But I will say it really is not a big deal. The weekends span from Friday to Monday. You have class all day, Friday through Monday. And so living closer to the East Coast, though, I have to fly in Thursday night, and usually I'm able to catch an afternoon flight into Denver and from Birmingham. And your first 4 days, like the very first cohort weekend that you go, the GEM faculty give you every date that you're expected to be there for the next year and a half. And so right from the beginning, and I'm a super planner, so I right from the beginning automatically put all those dates in my planner, and so that I could plan ahead and go ahead and get plane tickets. And I'd set up alerts on when plane ticket prices would drop. And then also the GEM faculty also set up well in advance different hotel blocks so that you can get really good discounts on rooms in downtown Denver. I mean, like Cohort weekend, for example, Cohort weekend was the same weekend as the Broncos playoffs game last January. And I was looking at hotels without the block, and they were going for like $250 to $300 more than the rate that the GEM program got for us. So I was really excited and fortunate to benefit from those. So hotels are reasonable and right there in the downtown area. And then also when you fly in, as of April of last year, Denver has a new light rail that goes directly from the airport to downtown, and that's only $9 your first time. And then while you're in Denver, you can get a student ID and also an RTD pass. So the RTD pass gets you a free ride on any of the public transportation in the Denver area, and that includes the light rail. So any new students, I highly recommend, get that RTD pass. It can save you an Uber ride, money for an Uber ride, or even the $9 to take that. But I hope that answers the question, if there's anything else that anyone wants to include. But it's really easy. I love going to Denver. It's really awesome going for every 3 months. It's a good time.
Thank you, Natalie. We have an additional question come in, and Owen, I will ask you this as somebody that's been out of the program for a few years. Owen, do you feel like you have been able to apply what you've learned in the GEM program in your position while in the program as well as in your current position?
Hi. Yeah, absolutely. So I really think one of the great things about the GEM program is kind of like we've talked about, is it touches on a lot of different facets of the energy industry. I happen to be in the oil and gas side, but it will give you exposure to, all the various forms of energy that are mainstream that we use today. But to your question, so I remember a couple of classes in particular that have still to this day been particularly beneficial to me as someone who has to work in, one, a large and complex organization, and two, with various different subject matter experts. So there's one class in particular for me was oil and gas accounting, which really took a pretty good deep dive into the nuances and into the financials and into, what's really driving valuations and profit and loss, expense statements. And so something like that, like I said, working with, teams where there's a finance person has given me that background where I can at least, I'm obviously not an expert in that field, but level with them, have some rudimentary background in what they're trying to do and in their field. Another thing that's come up here recently, in light of the Paris treaties here at Shell, is this big emphasis on reducing our overall carbon footprint. So I was looking back at my curriculum and a couple classes in particular, some of the environmental and regulatory stuff, which I'll be honest isn't something that particularly interests me most days, but has been something in hindsight that I've been very much been able to utilize and understand some of the common law approaches to both of those. So that's in terms of the coursework, definitely invaluable to have not only courses but also professors that many of them don't come from academia, but they actually have experience in the private sector. So that is something that was really valuable to me, where they could actually share their experience and And I'd say just ultimately the overall approach, this hybrid approach, kind of doing what we're doing now, where you're working from a remote location or working with people from different backgrounds, has helped me a lot, just being comfortable in that setting. I mean, it's not too often nowadays where I get an Outlook meeting and I'm talking with people from 3 different places, which is actually how we maturated projects within the GEM program. So, at first I was a little bit apprehensive about the remote kind of executive style education you were getting, but I mean, that's how basically all my meetings and projects are worked nowadays. So I just found that aspect in working with people from totally different backgrounds and who I might not ordinarily work with pretty invaluable to the whole experience.
Thanks, Owen. That's great. The next question is a very common question that we get from a lot of our students, so I'm going to ask it to the good of the group and for everyone. So the question is, earning my master's degree has always been a goal, but now I have a young family. Can any of you speak to how you fit in graduate school with work and family?
Nathan, I'd love to jump in on this one. Seeing as I'm a single dad and I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, this was definitely one of the challenges that I was most concerned with whenever I decided to enter the GEM program. Whenever I'm faced with kind of a challenge similar to this, balancing work, family, I always think about this sign that was in my boss's office whenever I first moved to Denver, and it said proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Call it the 7 P's of success. So a master's degree, just like your career or anything else that is of importance to you, is going to require a significant investment. But the way that I handled the challenge of balancing alternative priorities was to plan and to prioritize, and just to be very intentional with the tactics and the strategies that I took in order to accomplish, really a very full plate of activities with graduate school and with my family. So I hope that helps. I'm sure other people probably have some thoughts, but yeah, that's how I handled it, was just being ahead of the game and planning as best I could.
Hey, Jason, or Nate, I'm gonna jump in on this one. I don't have any children, so can't necessarily speak to what it's like to go through with a young family. However, I have worked in several different groups that other people have families, and it's been a really interesting experience too, because I feel like I've gotten to know their families because we're video chatting, we're Zooming all the time, and so it's not uncommon to be in the middle of a group meeting and then all of a sudden like an 8-year-old is like peering around the screen, like saying hi and like good night or whatever. So, but I want to say that as from the side of someone who is working with other people who have their own families, young families, I've always tried to be really flexible. I understand everyone has, even if you don't have a young family to fit in, everyone has their own things going on. And so that's the great thing about, I guess, the hybrid environment of this too, is that you really get to know all of your cohort mates during the first 4 days of every cohort weekend, so that by the time you're on the video chats in the middle of the quarter, you know those people. They aren't just some random people that happen to be like in the same program as you. So you tend to be more flexible and understand, like, okay, our group meeting needs to meet later than normal because so-and-so's daughter has ballet and he has to pick her up at 8 o'clock. So you just shift the schedule back. So I don't know if that was any more help, but just giving the other perspective side, everyone understands. I mean, it's like, your cohort becomes your family to some extent. And when you're working so close with people in your group, you learn to be flexible and support them, because it's not easy to do the program with a family, I'm sure, but with the support of your group, it's not as tough as it seems like it would be.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Jason. That's great insight. And I wanted to let everybody know, all the viewers, we have a number of questions coming through. Just hang tight. We will get through them. So our next question I will ask Natasha. As my job is pretty demanding and consists of a lot of travel, I'm worried about how I can fit in school obligations with my job so I can be successful at both.
Sure, I'll be happy to take this question. So I do a lot of travel as well for work. And first and foremost, I will say that the program is challenging, especially with the travel schedule, but it is doable. And so I just want to share a couple of pieces of advice that have helped me a little bit. First, as was just mentioned, plan ahead if possible and stay disciplined if possible. So the GEM quarters are quick and they don't lend themselves well to falling behind. So establishing a plan and kind of getting on a routine as best you can that works with your schedule is ideal. And just on that, with even logistics of how you work of how you learn, excuse me. So if you learn better with like hardback books versus online books, it may be, you know, better just to download and get a book online. I know in the past I've had to make extra luggage space to carry my 5-pound textbook with me. And so just kind of thinking ahead about those things when you're traveling. Secondly, take advantage of the online learning system. So the lectures and course material are accessible from your phone, from a tablet, from a computer. So I've definitely accessed those lectures while I'm in transit or maybe while I'm working out. So you can really maximize your time. And then lastly, just communicate. Communicate with your teammates. Let them know if you have kind of a shift in schedule or if, you know, certain times won't work with you. The first 4 days are a great way to kind of let everyone know your schedule so you guys can kind of orient properly for the rest of the term. As you may know, every term there's group projects. So you're not going to get away from working with a group, and everyone is not always on the same time zone. So coordination is really important. And also communicate with your professors. Let them know, you know, you have an intense travel schedule, and in the past they've been accommodating. And then finally, I would say communicate with your boss at work. I know I've taken just the initiative to go ask them after I started the program, you know, how are things going with my work? Is the quality of my work suffering? I think that really just shows initiative, shows you really care about your work, but also, you know, your school needs attention as well. And you never know what benefit that may have. They may be able to work out something that can help you. So those are some tips. It is challenging, but it's definitely doable.
Thanks, Natasha. That's great. Natalie, I know that you had chimed into this a little bit on your previous response, but I'll ask you for a little more on it. What is it like being a part of a cohort? How well do you know your classmates, and do you find it valuable that they are all in the energy industry?
Yeah, okay, so that's a great follow-up to what I was saying already about just working in a group and being flexible. So the cohort experience is invaluable. I will say that you get so close. I mean, first of all, the first 4 days of every quarter, you're in Denver, you're in class from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., which some days are long, but some days go by so fast because the discussion is amazing. And you really get to know everyone in your cohort. And you have a lot of group projects, or rather one group project usually for every class that you take. And yes, group projects over Zoom sound not attractive, but it ends up being it ends up working out okay. And because it forces you to be engaged throughout the quarter. But the GEM faculty actually assigns who's going to be in each of your groups at the beginning of each quarter, at least for the first 4 quarters, and then you get to choose who's in your group. But they do it based on diversity. So they develop the teams of 3 to 4 to 5 people, depending on how many people are in the class. And they assign the teammates based on diversity. So based on if I'm electric sector, they're going to put me with someone from the oil and gas sector, or they're going to put me with someone who has more of a legal background or a finance background. And since I have an engineering background, so they really do a good job at mixing that up so that you end up working with everyone in your cohort for the most part by the end of the program. And so because of that, like I said earlier, the cohort is almost like a big family. We all get together. Okay, so I'm about to graduate, for example, and we're all freaking out like, oh my gosh, we're not going to see each other in person every 3 months. So we're already planning like a ski trip to do after graduation. So, and then I don't know, like I said, like I started out with, the cohort experience is invaluable. What was the rest of the question? Oh yeah, and with people coming from all different parts of the energy sector, or the energy industry, you get that unique perspective. You may think like, oh, I know the answer to that question in a classroom setting, like a professor will prompt a discussion and you'll contribute, but then you'll hear a completely different perspective that you'd never thought about it that way. So it really is getting that big picture, that energy industry perspective. And then also some people are actually not necessarily from the energy industry. They're looking to make a career move or a change. And so I know we had one question come through, and they were asking, do you recommend this program for someone who doesn't have as much experience in the energy industry? I can't think of a better way to, if you're interested in getting into the energy industry, I can't think of a better way than to start with the GEM program. Not only will you learn all the different perspectives, you'll be exposed to every sector, and also the network of the alumni as well as the faculty. They can get you plugged in immediately, so leverage those networks. So I recommend this program. People without energy experience will surely get it. It might not come as naturally to you at first, but by the end you'll surely get it. So hope that answered the question.
Thanks, Natalie. That's great. Owen, we actually have a question directly towards you. Going to put you on the spot a little bit. So I work in oil and gas here in Houston. Why should I enroll in the GEM program?
Sure. Well, for starters, a lot of choices here in Texas. I'm not sure how many offer the kind of the executive style graduate offering. And many of them might require actual physical class participation. And I know for me, I wasn't actually living in Houston when I enrolled in the program, but I was in a remote location, and that was in North Dakota of all places. So I was able to advance my career, at least on the academic side, while still being in a remote spot. The other thing I can think of, Houston, it's predominantly oil and gas focused, whereas in Denver, you're going to get more of an aggregation of the various sectors of the energy industry between oil and gas. Some of the wind, and then the utility side of it's been big as well. So, but for someone like you that's in oil and gas, certainly Denver has its appeal. It's kind of established itself as a hub for the Rocky Mountains, and a lot more smaller companies based up in Denver, whereas you have here in Houston, I find it's a lot more corporate, larger companies like a Shell, like an Exxon, whereas in Denver you get a kind of a smaller, more entrepreneurial type of crowd and environment from the companies there. And then kind of like I mentioned before, I think Denver has a lot of appeal just as a city, and as some of the other panelists have alluded to. And so that attracts, I think, a broad and diverse group to the program. So I definitely recommend Denver as a city. And for me, it was kind of the remote appeal of being able to get the executive hybrid style graduate degree while I was in a different location. It's not to mention, if you're in Houston and you're looking at some of the surrounding areas, the drive is just about as far as a flight to Denver. So at the end of the day, Denver's a great city as well, and has a lot to offer from an energy perspective and what's going on there. And and I think this program might be unique. There might be one or two other graduate style or executive style courses like this. But believe the GEM program was the first, so it's really been able to tweak and kind of high grade the curriculum and the delivery of the program and the curriculum. So I think this is the 15th or 16th cohort coming up. So they've done a lot since I was there, which was back as the third cohort, to kind of weed out some of the inefficiencies in the process. And now I think it's running like a well-oiled machine.
Thanks, Owen. And to go on that, I will ask Natasha, besides energy-focused courses, what sets this program apart from other graduate business programs?
Sure. So I think there are a handful of things that set GEM apart. I'll talk about two or three. First are the travel courses. So as an elective option, you can travel to DC or London for about a week or a little bit less, and have briefings by oil and gas companies, renewable organizations, think tanks, and energy experts. And these courses, I think, really capture the global aspect of the program and really set it apart. And so I would recommend everyone, if you're thinking about, a travel course, absolutely take it. I actually just came back from the London course about just over a month ago, and it was amazing. To be honest, I'm still processing everything that happened there, but it was a smaller group of about 10 students, and we had personal meetings with well-known names such as Bloomberg Energy, Shell Oil, Valero Refining, the World Nuclear Association's former director. And so these courses really give you an intense introduction, I guess, to, in my case, European energy issues and research happening in the UK. So in response to the Paris Climate Agreement, and they're phasing out coal. So just to kind of jump in and get real detailed information and real briefings with questions. So these aren't large conferences, they're one-on-one meetings or 1-on-10 meetings, I guess. So it's definitely a smaller atmosphere where you can really understand kind of their thought process. So I think that really sets GEM apart. Another thing is the ability to publish a paper, I guess, or do an independent study, but in my case, publish a paper. So I didn't realize when I enrolled, but one course, the professor expects a publishable paper, at least the quality of a publishable paper, and by the end of the course. And so while every group doesn't pursue this, you really have the opportunity to provide data to the industry. So you're not just receiving it. And that's something that my group is actually pursuing now. And so to have, the opportunity to provide real value to the energy industry is really interesting, and something that I don't think all MBA programs offer. And then lastly, I'll talk about the executive in residence program. So each cohort weekend, there's at least one executive in residence, which is an executive who has a breadth of knowledge and experience in the energy industry. And they've been from oil and gas, from utilities, they kind of range the whole spectrum. And they really will give you access to their knowledge. They'll give you access to their insight. And they participate in one-on-one meetings, in group lunches, and in even some class discussions and class lectures. And so it's great access right there to someone who's been maybe where you want to be, or can provide insight to your current situation.
Thanks, Natasha.
Hey, Nate, do you mind if I jump in and just add something on the executive in residence? Sorry, I'm jumping in so much, but just this past October when I was in Denver, I participated in the executive in residence program for the first time and got to know pretty well throughout the weekend Teresa Madden, who is the former, she just retired as the CFO to Excel. So being a young engineer at Southern Company, it was really cool to have a direct line of communication and to be able to sit down one-on-one with the former CFO of another large utility. And so even though she's not even necessarily like an engineer or necessarily that I want to be CFO of Southern Company, not saying that, but to see someone have that direct access to someone was really cool, because like I couldn't even imagine right now having like a one-on-one with my CFO at my company. So to have that was a really neat experience. And then also being able to go to lunch with her, talk one-on-one, and hopefully have that connection. Even though I'm graduating, now that I am, once you're part of the GEM family, it's sounds really corny. Once you're part of the GEM program, I didn't mean to say that. That was a slip. You're always a part of it. So even though, and I know like Owen and Jason are alumni, so like Natasha and I, we're not there yet, but we're like in the throes of the program right now. But just because you graduate from this program doesn't mean that you're no longer connected. So these are not just executives that take an interest in you while you're a student. These are executives that are going to take an interest in you as long as you're interested in learning from them. So just wanted to add that.
That's great. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks for adding that in. Jason, I will ask you this question. What has been the biggest benefit of being a part of this program for you?
Thanks, Nate. I think I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record here, but the material, having the ability to intelligently communicate with my customers regarding really the entire value chain, including all feasible alternatives in the energy business, has been probably the biggest benefit. But can't just limit it to one, right? So beyond that, I will say I think the network of professors, the network, as both Natalie and Natasha have mentioned, of executives and residents, and then finally, ultimately, the network that you create within your cohort has to be almost of equivalent value to the knowledge, because quite honestly, these folks are the leaders of thought process in the energy business for years to come. I know specifically out of my cohort, I've seen a number of different individuals transition to new positions within companies based on the relationships they had with other individuals in the cohort. There are other people starting their own businesses and approaching, private equity for the backing. So there's a lot that comes out of the relationships that are developed during your time within your cohort. And I think, again, that's of equivalent value to just the fantastic information shared, over the course of the program. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. We have time for a few more questions, and if you have any last questions that you want answered, please ask them now. Question that I asked, Owen, I know you jumped into this a little bit previously, but anybody else have some insight onto this question? What skills and knowledge did the program give you to become a better energy professional?
So, I guess I'll jump in here. So skills and knowledge, I'm an oil and gas individual. And so, of course, whenever I'm looking at the alternatives, I'm automatically thinking oil and natural gas. My career as an account manager requires me to have a lot of intelligent conversations with people who aren't just focused on, the price of oil, the price of gas, but they're focused on what our trade partners are concerned about in Asia or in Europe. And so having an understanding specifically on a global scale of how different eco-political factors affect the price of oil, which ultimately affects the individuals that work within the service company with Baker Hughes here in Denver, has significantly benefited me. So I'm sure probably everybody has similar thoughts, but really understanding how alternative energy policy in Germany is going to affect oil and gas prices in the U.S. It's just phenomenal how this program prepares you to have conversations with people.
I'll add to that, and I think I mentioned it to someone, one of the sent in a question, but that's one of my, I guess, weaknesses was kind of the financials, and I mentioned it earlier. So a couple of the classes I took, being oil and gas accounting, and then I think it was the advanced energy economics, I'm not sure what it's called now, kind of gave me a pretty good foundational knowledge for more the things I hadn't quite experienced thus far in my career, but things that I definitely wanted to know more about, i.e. valuations, economic modeling, and things that I knew I wanted to have a better understanding of in order to progress my career, to give me that mindset, understanding how to make a dollar, how to, understanding profit and loss. And so being exposed to that and what management or what C-level type of executives are looking for when they're running a company really got me tuned in with that. And then, like I mentioned, I can't emphasize it enough, at least for me, it was just working in these teams, like at Shell now, I'm in these cross-functional teams, people with different backgrounds, different nationalities, different, geographies. And so just utilizing that to my advantage now and being comfortable in in like a remote type of setting, or working in a team where you might not share the same views or ideas, but working towards a common goal and ultimately, maturing something into a proposal, into an idea, into a recommendation. And I think that's kind of one of the huge advantages of GEM, is that you are in a team similar to where you would be either in a corporate setting or even in a more entrepreneurial setting, if it's just a 2 or 3 man shop, it's, you know, a lot of consensus building within your team and good healthy debate in order to bring forward, like I said, a recommendation, or it might be a paper or a project. So I can't emphasize that part of it enough for me.
Thanks, Owen. That's great. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. I want to thank all of our panelists for providing insight on their experience of the GEM program. I also want to thank all of the viewers and remind you that I will be following up with everybody personally to answer any additional questions that you guys have about the application process or the program itself. You can see how valuable it is to hear the insight of current students and alumni, and we are happy to connect you personally with a student or an alumni if that's something that you're interested in. So I look forward to talking to everybody soon, and thank you for your time. Have a great day.